was in 1877 that the city of Tombstone was founded by a prospector by the name of Ed Schieffelin. Now, if you are a keen person on old mining history, you have probably read about him or heard his name mentioned before. Ed Schieffelin was the prospector who was also involved in a mining claim that became the Contention Mine over in Contention City. That is where two other prospectors, Jack Friday and Ed Williams, staked a claim that Ed figured was his, and the three prospectors then decided to split the claim, with Ed getting the northern portion and Jack and his partner getting the southern part. Anyways, let's get back to the story here. Ed Schieffelin ended up working on a scouting voyage with a group of soldiers, and because he was a prospector, he would sometimes go off into the desert and poke around, looking at rocks. The soldiers had warned him not to go too far out because of the native Indians in the area, and the only stone he might find would be his own tombstone. Well, one day while out scouting around an area known as Goose Flats, Ed found silver, and lots of it. Ed estimated this load of silver was over 50 feet long and over a foot wide, of almost pure silver. Ed and his brother Al, along with another partner, Richard Gerd, formed the Tombstone Mining and Milling Company and built a stamp mill near the San Pedro River, about 8 miles away. Well, it didn't take long for word to get out about this strike, and people were moving into the area in droves. During this time, an area for a town site was being surveyed out. A town lot cost $5, and the lots were sold almost immediately. Because this new town was being built right close to where Ed's mine was, and because the soldiers had told Ed that the only rocks he would find would be his tombstone, they ended up naming the town Tombstone. This town grew fast. Within just a few short years, Tombstone had a bowling alley, 5 churches, a school, a couple of banks, 3 newspapers, and even an ice cream parlor. Of course, there was the other establishments such as 110 saloons, 14 gambling joints, numerous dance halls, and several brothels. The town grew from a few hundred folk to over 14,000 in a matter of a few years, and the mines in the area produced close to $85 million in silver bullion, making it the largest silver-producing area in all of Arizona. By this time, Ed and his partners not only had the Tombstone mine, but they also owned the original, Good Enough mine in the nearby Toughnut mine. The 3 miners then sold these mines to a group of big city investors from Philadelphia. A few months later, it was reported that miners working the Toughnut mine struck a vein of silver 90 feet wide. This vein is said at $170 per ton, with some saying as much as $22,000 a ton. Remember, this is back in the 1880s. Of course, Tombstone is not only known for being a mining town. It's also famous for its crime and shootouts. Being so close, 30 miles from the Mexican border, meant there would be trouble with things like smuggling. Back then, the Mexican government had a big tax on items, and so a lot of cross-border smuggling took place. Cattle rustling was big at the time also. These crimes were carried out by outlaw elements labeled as cowboys. These cowboys consisted of a bunch of friends and acquaintances who teamed up for various crimes and came to each other's aid when needed. Then, one evening in March of 1881, 3 of these cowboys held up a stagecoach that was on its way from Tombstone to Benson, to where the nearest train station was. On this stage, there was an estimated $26,000 in silver bullion. That would be about $730,000 in today's money. The stagecoach driver and a passenger were both shot and killed. Deputy Marshal Virgil Earp, with his temporary deputies and brothers, Wyatt and Morgan Earp, pursued the cowboys suspected of the murders. It was this chain of events that eventually led to the shootout on October 26, 1881, in which the lawmen and Doc Holliday killed Tom and Frank McClory and Billy Clanton. These 3 men who were shot were buried in graves up at Boot Hill. Boot Hill got its name because most of the men buried there died in their boots. The shootout at the OK Corral was part of a family and political feud. A couple of months later, on December 28, 1881, Virgil Earp was ambushed and seriously wounded by some gunmen shooting from the second floor of an unfinished building. Although identified, the suspects provided witnesses who supplied alibis, and the men were not prosecuted. Then in March of 1882, Morgan Earp was killed by a shot that struck his back while in a pool hall. Of course, like most old towns back then, there were fires, and Tombstone was no exception. On June 22, 1881, the first fire destroyed 66 businesses making up the eastern half of the business district. The fire began when a lit cigar ignited a barrel of whiskey in the arcade saloon. Then on May 25, 1882, another fire started in a Chinese laundry. This fire destroyed the Grand Hotel and the Tivoli Saloon before it jumped across the street, destroying more than 100 other businesses. With the lack of enough water to put out the flames, buildings in the fire's path were dynamited to deny the fire any fuel. A few years later, some of the deeper mines started to experience water seeping into the mines. This proved to become quite costly, having to be pumping water out all the time. As time went on, the water flowing into the mines was causing extreme flooding, and so some of the mines shut down. However, around this same time, the price of silver slid down to just 90 cents an ounce and mining became unprofitable, so more mines shut down. The mines that remained operational laid off workers. Individuals who had thought about leaving Tombstone when the mines were flooding started to pack up and leave town. The price of silver recovered for a while and a few mines began producing again, but never at the level reached in the early 1880s. There are widely varying estimates of the value of gold and silver mined during Tombstone's history. There are estimates that Tombstone mines produced 32 million troy ounces, that's like 1,000 metric tons of silver. It was estimated that during the first 4 years of activity, the mines produced about $25 million, which is approximately $727 million today. Other estimates include as much as $1.21 billion to $2.56 billion in today's money. Today, Tombstone is a tourist town with about 1,300 residents. It's a great place to stop for a visit and walk around for a day on the boardwalks, where there are gift shops and eateries. You can even stop in for a cold one and quench your thirst at one of the old saloons. I hope you enjoyed this short story about the mines and city of Tombstone, Arizona. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you more old lost mine stories.